Hey, welcome back to Troll Time. I'm your host, Ivan D. Curtis, aka the Troll King. And this is a show where we talk sports, movies, or anything thought provoking. Today, we'll be talking about the Natasha Cloud trade, Unrivaled Championship. We'll also be talking about all the smoke episodes with Cheryl Miller and Asia Wilson. I had some interesting things to say that we're going to dissect. I don't do this show alone. And now we have the First Lady, Andrea Richmond, joining us full time. How y'all doing today?
Good, good. It's always glad, like I said, to be with my two big bros, talking sports, talking about the latest and greatest and everything going on. I'm always excited to be on in front of a camera, and yeah. So let's go. Let's rock.
What's up with you, hey Willie?
Hey, let's do it. Y'all know I'm getting closer and closer to being in my feelings because y'all just better hope for you all's sake that the Trojans go deep in this tournament.
We'll
I'm
get
gonna
to,
give
we'll
you
get to that one.
flashlight poll
We'll get to that
review
when
on our show.
we'll get to that when the tourney starts. Uh, Tipping it off, Natasha Cloud was a guard for the Phoenix Mercury last season, but a trade went through. She went to the New York Liberty in exchange for a 2025 seven overall pick and a 2026 first round pick to the Connecticut Sun. Me and A Willie was talking about Natasha Cloud not too long ago, even before this trade happened. She had, at least she ended her career uh, in Phoenix with some dynamite playoff games, although they got swept. Um, really the question was how much does she have left in the tank? I think going to a veteran team, the responsibility factors may not be as heavy. So that helps her out, and then exchange it gives New York Liberty some well needed depth on the perimeter. And even with that saying, with her being a league vet, um, you know she she's better than any backup that the Liberty have had in a while at that position. So I think does it put New York Liberty in position to repeat? I would say so. Uh, hey Willie, I want you to lead this off. Let us know your thoughts about the trade.
Hey, I'm happy for her, and she was talking, of course, on all the smoke about how she found out about the trade, and it was interesting discourse for sure, as it relates to how players find out about being moved and how they feel about being moved. It really humanizes players, and you see what the emotions of being traded, what that triggers, and for her, it was good because you're looking at she got moved. She was in Phoenix, got moved to Connecticut, and was on a team that is clearly rebuilding. And like you said, OG, if you look at where T Cloud is in her career, she is probably much more interested in chasing championships than being on a developing team. So, with that being said, I think it was a great move there. I think one of the things that I'm interested in as it relates to T Cloud's fit in New York is I'm very excited to see her and Benaja Laney on the perimeter guarding. I'm
Yes.
very excited to see that because both of them together and the way that they play and it's funny because when you watch New York, obviously they're very physical, but all of their players seem to kind of be like business as usual. And we talked earlier, you got to bring somebody with some fire that's outward,
Hmm.
and she fits that mold in terms of bringing somebody that's going to outwardly bring the noise, as they say. So, and then the other thing I'll say real quick that you look at this is we always look at all these moves, especially from a roster construction standpoint. If you putting teams together, these types of moves set the precedent for the moves that's coming down the line. And you start looking about, okay, T Cloud is fetching two ones. What does that mean if somebody else gets moved that may be a player that may have a higher stature than T Cloud in terms of being a player? What does that mean? Is it three ones? Is it, you know, when are you going to get those ones? All those things matter. So I think for New York, I think this was a really good move. And then if you're Connecticut, you certainly are looking toward building for the future. So however many assets you can get, especially as you have a talented pool of players in the next couple of drafts that are about to hit the W, I think that was a good haul for Connecticut.
Okay, and Boris, your thoughts on the trade?
If you looked at the Liberty last year, it was very clear that they really desperately needed like a legitimate point guard. And unfortunately, as time wore on for Vandersloot, her role became more of like a change of pace, like speed, catch and shoot. You want her to pass like she did back in the day, but unfortunately, she doesn't have that as much anymore. So now you have that legitimate backup point guard who can run the offense, can take that place for Sabrina, even though she's gotten a little bit better in that regard and a lot of bit better, I feel like, over her career. It's very clear that they need somebody to run that system in times where there's a little bit of stagnation in the offense. Sabrina's shots aren't hitting. Maybe Stewie isn't getting the greatest looks, or maybe JJ, unfortunately, she's either frustrated or on the bench because of fouls. Right? You need somebody that has that temerity, that poise to calm down the system. And like A. Willie said too, defensively as well. Having somebody like Sabrina, it's nice to have Benaja Laney and to also have Phoebich and to add on somebody like T Cloud too. So your defense is so much better. You have that playmaking that you desperately needed, and you still are coming off of the fact that you won a championship. This is a good situation. And you look at the other side too. Morgan Tuck is now the GM for the Connecticut Sun. Shout out to Morgan Tuck, baby. UConn Husky legend, right? But uh, this organization is going in a new direction, right? And it frustrated me when they had the offer initially on the table, like having 2 first-round picks for somebody like T Cloud. Obviously, this is a player that is older. You're not going to get much value for her because I believe she's also on a 1-year deal, right? So you're only going to have her for a year. You might as well get something from that, especially I always say, for everybody who's talking about all these GMs selling picks for these next coming draft picks, that doesn't mean that these draft picks aren't good. It means a lot of these GMs are fighting for their jobs and positions, because a lot of these upcoming draft picks, especially even later in these rounds, right? You have quality picks. Haley Van Lith might be a top of the second round pick. Lai Tu King, there's quality there. In 26, by the way, might be one of the deepest draft classes of all time. There's a lot of value for these drafts. And also, especially in this draft class, the 26 CBA might give them a little bit more leeway, a little bit more protection, and it costs a lot more money. So securing as many picks as you can for this draft class is super important going forward, because it allows you to have a lot more money to play around with going into free agency, and you have something that's going to be there and solid, because a lot of players that we know are going to be free agents next year. So I feel like this is a win-win for both sides. You make sure that you have like several picks. What is it? 3 first-round picks, I believe, in this draft class that you'll be able to keep going forward into the future under a really owner-friendly CBA. So that's great for the Sun. And then you have that change of pace. Then you have that point guard that you desperately needed, playmaking that you desperately needed, and by the way, defense as well. Win-win for both sides. I don't know why it didn't happen earlier, but hey, it happened. So I'm happy for it.
We know somebody that's mad that it happened. Is she waiting?
Oh, Marina Mayberry right now feels like, you remember that last scene of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where it's just Will Smith and that
Oh yeah.
That's exactly what she feels like. Marina, baby, gonna have to see it through, my boy.
And just for those of you who haven't been following Natasha Cloud's career or didn't know what she did last season, she averaged 11.5 points, 4 rebounds, almost 7 assists and 1 steal, which is solid when you're talking about going to a veteran team as the Liberty. And then in the playoffs, she averaged almost 25 points and 5 rebounds and 10 assists. So, hey, you just needed to play sparingly in the regular season and be ready to go in the playoffs. It's going to be a long season anyway, and health is always the main concern, especially in the shortened season in the WNBA. So just be on the lookout for that. And the countdown for the WNBA. We had 59 days away from opening night. So trust, and we plan to be going live here and there after some games on some late nights different things like that. So be on the lookout for that. Moving along, all the Smoke podcast. That's Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. Some past episodes, they had Aja Wilson on, and then they had Cheryl Miller. The first topic that I want to talk about with Aja Wilson is they basically asked her who she felt like was going to have a bright future that's playing college basketball right now. And of course, I want you to take a listen at this.
Yeah. Collegiate player right now in the women's game, you feel like has a bright future?
Man. I'm going to be obviously biased with my Gamecocks because duh. I would say Raven.
Cold.
I feel like Raven, and she's at the.
Now, if you take a listen at that, she did lead and say she was going to be biased. And she definitely was biased because no knock to Raven. I think she's been an outstanding collegiate player. But when you talk about moving towards the future, I'm not sure if the W is just yet. I think it's going to be a challenge. Is she a tenacious defender? Yes. Can she run an offense? Yes. But her scoring is subpar. Her shooting is subpar. But the Don pipeline could do something for her, but at the end of the day, I just kind of chuckled about it because you had a ton of players to name, and then when I went down, the Twitter posts, people saying it's obviously she don't watch college basketball, which may or may not be true. I mean, because they are busy, but there was a lot of names you could have mentioned that could have got their names in the airwaves, and I don't knock her for speaking about somebody that came from the same, alumni at the same university and different things like that. So I just thought it was funny. Just real quick, your thoughts when you heard that.
Raven is a player that's gotten a lot of flack throughout her career, right? And it's clearly really affected her psyche. If you listen to her pathway, right, from when she was first wave off from Caitlin, she says that she almost quit the sport because of that, right? She had to really deep down, she really had to think, and then she came back with the national championship. They were able to win off of her, like making some shots that she hadn't prior to before, right? 3-point shots weren't not a thing, and she slowly kind of added it. This year, it's kind of faded away back for her. I'll say this about Raven Johnson, I feel like as a player, right? Raven Johnson as a player already has that A+ thing that you should want if you're not going to be an overall star in the W, right? She has the A+ thing in her defensive ability, right? Very good to have. Now she needs to add that other piece to her game, right? I feel like her first initial years, I saw like her passing ability being along the lines of flashes of Chelsea Gray, and that's one of her favorite players. If she really dug down and like really worked on her passing ability, then that's good. If she really dug down and really worked on her shooting ability, then that's that other thing that I feel like will keep her in the league. But like you said, at this current point, there's a little bit more work in progress that she needs to really make sure she's a W professional. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is Asia hyping up one of her mentees, right? This is somebody who looks up to Aja Wilson, has been around Aja Wilson, and wants to be a great player like her. So I feel like Aja was boosting some confidence in her because that's clearly what she needs. Raven Johnson needs to get to that next level. I would have gone with Malaysia personally, but uh, hey man, boost the player that you're mentoring. I love that from Asia, and hopefully Raven can turn that some motivation into you know proving to everybody that she can make that W. But you need that next thing in your arsenal, in my opinion.
Got you. Real quick, hey Willie, your thoughts?
It's interesting that she said Raven. So I'll ask my family here, what's Raven's nickname?
Raven John, ooh,
Hollywood.
Hollywood, yeah,
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Hollywood,
Shout out
yeah.
to my city. But anyway, her nickname is Hollywood. So clearly, in addition to her defensive prowess that you so eloquently described, sis, the other thing that she's got going on is clearly she has some branding cachet and some things off the floor that bring some notoriety and some shine to her also, right? So I got to ask the family, what makes Raven so different than Nika Mule then?
You said what?
South Carolina in
Nika
UCL.
Mule has a cult following for defending
Yep.
and also her presence off the floor.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what has Nika Mule in the W.
Mhm.
And shout out to her and continue progress in her rehabilitation from her ACL.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was just walking the runway in Olivia Nelson Adota's gear over. She was just rocking the runway in that, right?
Yeah.
So again, Nika just signed also an Under Armour deal.
Yeah. She did.
Is that from her offensive prowess?
You know, that's a great point, A. Willie. A
Right?
great point.
Mhm.
That's not from her offensive prowess. She barely played in Seattle last year. Remember,
Mhm.
she also said when she got drafted, she was nervous about making the team.
Team.
And
Yep.
she and Coach Oriema said, go there and be you. Well,
Mhm.
what's Nika? Right?
She's a defensive
Defending,
point
and
guard.
she has her presence off the floor. And she
Mhm.
has a cult following for that. Right?
Mhm.
And hey, I'm all for it. Point A. I was the defensive player of the year. I'm all for that. But I'm
Yeah.
saying that's her presence. That is her platform. So
Mhm.
why can't that be Ravens' platform?
No, I agree. Now when you put it under that context, and it was funny because I was gonna end it with that is that South Carolina is deeply rooted, largely because Don Staley. What sets her apart, aside from Kim Mulkey, is they played the game. And like, so people who watch them as players are definitely rooting hard for them as coaches. And Don, that's another big impact for her because she has been a part of a lot of people's lives for a long time. And now she's giving back to players, of her likeness. And I think that's the big appeal outside of winning and having great players. That's a large appeal when we talk about non-basketball related topics. So that's a good point. When I seen the Under Armour deal, I was kind of stunned because I'm like, man, like they wouldn't even play her, and that just proves the point. So, and let's be clear, I'm not knocking Raven or anything like that.
No. No. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we don't do that here. I don't do that on my post. So we don't do that. But what we can do is we can constructively criticize. I mean, because the one thing about sports in general is that it's an open platform and people can see what you can do and they can see what you can't do or what you're not doing. And so it's no ill feelings about saying how a particular player is playing at a certain time or over a longer period of time. So the capabilities is there. If you put in the work, it'll eventually happen. So I'm not saying that she can't make the W, but as of right now, we often said that, like, I actually think this is the loaded draft class. When you talk about when you're looking for role players or players that can possibly work their way into a lineup, this is the perfect draft for that.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Bordy.
It's,
And I
no,
will
go ahead,
say
Courtney.
this.
Then I'll
Yeah.
add to what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say this. It's not like UConn and South Carolina is becoming that. Sometimes Notre Dame as well have been able to push through players who are probably somewhat fringe and cusp, but because of those relationships and the fact that they're able to find a way to fit into that system and find ways to be productive without being a star player, that keeps them around their IQ, their intelligence. Remember a couple years ago, Shania Chong, right? When she was on W rosters, right? So like we'll see how this pans out. I believe in her work, and obviously, it's really boosting her and motivating her. I would feel more comfortable if she had that extra thing. But like A. Willie said, sometimes if you do that one thing excellently and you buying enough, if you are, you can make it on the roster.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and we know this when we put teams together. I'll say that I'm gonna end my point on this. When you do something like you said, Boris, and you do it at a professional level, when we bring you in, we're bringing you in to do whatever it is that you do at a professional level. Do that first,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now, when scoring is your calling card, then okay, that's easy, whatever, right? But if we brought your ass in here to rebound, or we brought you in here to defend, don't start working on your game during the game, right? do what we ask you to do first, and then start adding to your bag and all that. But if we brought you in here to guard, then guard, right? And so um, I say that because that's going to be our calling card. But the other thing is earlier in the year, I say this to end out. This has nothing to do with Raven. Um, Asia was asked a similar question, and she said Joyce Edwards was next.
Yep.
Right.
So just something else to keep in mind there now. And I don't think she was being a homer when she said Joyce Edwards was next.
No, but no,
Right?
definitely.
Like, so yeah.
Now I chuckled when you said, "Don't work on your game in the game." Man, shout out to one of my he was my middle school coach and my high school coach, Chris Johnson, because he used to say the same thing, like, "Hey, that's not your game, son." Like, So
Have you ever taken that shot before?
exactly.
Right.
So, but no,
Work
this.
on your game during the game.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let you leave with this board about Cheryl Miller. That clip is a little longer, so I'm not really gonna play that, but Bordy is gonna dissect it for you, and let you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so obviously, not the only topic that came from all the smoke. There was another topic they brought in Cheryl Miller. And if you're a big basketball fan in general, just watch it because Cheryl Miller is a joy, absolutely all the way down. Anytime you listen to her, you just wish that she's around cameras or around the game more. But one interesting topic, right? One interesting
Hashtag fight on.
fight on, man, always, right? One interesting topic that she did mention though, she talked about the fact that um there was a question asked about whether or not players should transition to the W after 1 year, one and dones like there are in the men's game. And Cheryl vehemently tore down. She was like, absolutely not, right? This is the perfect opportunity and allows the women's game to grow by having these stars in the game for so long, seniors who have been around the game. You're able to figure out their story. You have players to root for, right? Yeah, there's more stories to Paige Becker's name, her being in the NCAA tournament for year after year after year, and this is now her last time to get it. Or even someone like Juju who failed, and now she has another opportunity. And it allows W players it's not like in the men's league where you get paid and then it's the playoffs that you shine. Something that she said is in the NCAA tournament, that's where you make your notoriety. That's where you get your fame. That's where you get your money. And then you get your glory when you go to the W. And until that flips, until the financial situation flips, that's when we can probably start to see one and dones. But I want to, talk to you guys about it, about how you feel about whether or not the women's game should go to one and done and eventually is going to happen. So when should it happen?
This is something that is near and dear to me
Mhm.
with what we're seeing in the women's game. Of course, with my experience working in sports marketing at Nike and also running a basketball division for a major financial management company, I've been fortunate enough to, and then of course working for the Phoenix Suns in scouting and then working in the league as well. I've been fortunate enough to have to scout and evaluate players from both lenses, right? And scouting a player as to if they can play or not and can they be a good fit for my team? Can they rock? That's kind of different than looking at are they a good fit for my brand?
Mhm.
And those things are a little bit different. And so you have to look at it through a different lens. And so when you're in that market and see when you have some things that you can organically sort of draft off of in order to tell stories about players. That's one of the things we talked about that you will hear a lot about in the W. You got to tell more of our stories. Talk about us off the floor. Well, we know a lot of those things when you were spending time in college. We're developing those human interest stories about you. And those are just things that we just don't have the opportunity to do on the men's side. And we've talked about this offline now. Juju is the face of college basketball, not
Period.
women's college basketball,
Period.
college basketball, right? We are at a point, and we have a person that's in the not the way they play, but some of the other things are in the mold of the Christian Leitner type at Duke. This guy that's coming along that's the best player in college is at this institution where people hate the players,
Mhm.
right? As JJ Redick, what that's like. We got a guy like that at Duke. And Juju is a bigger face and is a bigger, more established star in college basketball than Cooper Flag. And that's partly because these women are staying in school. And who would have thought that we would ever seen this day, right? And I think that's a part of it. And I think the other thing is, we talked about this before, I think the style of play on the women's side is another reason why we've experienced so much growth. Because, I've said this a lot in meetings when I was, in the NBA. I'm taking you behind the curtain a little bit. What we marvel and we all talk about just how physical the women's game is, right? So with the women's game being that physical on the college side, and you have these women that are so experienced on the college side, that means greatness ain't easy, right? And so what we're seeing on the NBA side and what we're seeing in men's college basketball is, as we have legislated some of the physicality out, as we have gotten to a point where we have one and dones, where quite frankly, it's easier to be a great player in men's college basketball than in women, because when you come in as a freshman, the people that are still in college are there because they got to be there. Right? They ain't in the league. Yeah. So it's easier for a freshman really, really to come in and dominate. It's easier in that regard. What's happening with that, and as we legislate physicality out of it on the men's side, and you're doing this because you're trying to make it more entertaining.
Freedom of movement.
Right. But what's happening is the very people that you think that you are trying to cater toward to watch more for more entertainment, guess what they're doing? They're rebelling against that shit. Because what we want to see in greatness is, we want to see people do things that we can't do. Right? That's what we want to see. So we don't want to see a game where it's being made easier for you to be great. And, make it a football reference. Tom Brady talks about this. Right? He talks about how this game in football is soft. It's easier to be great. This is what he says. Right? So we got the same thing going on the men's side, in men's college basketball and the NBA, and the fan base is rebelling. Right? Now you put that back on the women's side, they got to do extraordinary shit to be great. Ask Caitlin Clark about last year in the W when she first started. Great player. But ask her about what she went through. Right? And so that's what we want to see. We want to see people doing shit that we can't do. And so when you have that, and you have that on the women's college side, with women staying in school longer, right? So it's harder for you to come here as a freshman. Yeah, we're going to run through and win the national championship, and I'm going to be the best player. It's hard to do that as a freshman, right? Paige ain't won one yet, right?
Yeah.
And she came through, and she was supposed to be the person that transcends women's college basketball, and she ain't won. So with that being said, I just love the fact that, again, as I say that, I'm also nuanced, like Too Short would say, and getting it. Get your money, man. I'm all about you jumping off the porch and getting your money. So I don't want people not getting their money. But also, right, it's nuanced. We have to draft off the fact that these women are in school, and this continued growth that we're seeing. We got to continue to facilitate that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the physicality, because me and OG have talked about, like, OG, that's a reason why you love the game. You love the women's game having that physicality. It's not so easy for newer players, one and dones, to hop into that physicality, right? But then you have players like Juju Watkins who are really annoyed about the one and done deal. OG, tell me how you feel about Cheryl Miller's thoughts.
I mean, it comes down to a thing that I think even that's really kind of stricken with the NBA. It's like, it's great that we have the player empowerment era, and like Willie say, everybody's getting their money and things of that nature. But on the backside of that, the fans are getting slighted. I mean, because we don't get a quality product for what they're getting paid to do. I mean, and that's what's making the women's game much more of a prized product, especially for people like us who love the game, is because, for one, when we see a women's game, we know the players are going to show up to play. Nobody's sitting out for load management. No, I honestly feel that there are more WNBA players that play hurt than NBA players.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them are coming off an overseas season and jumping right into another season and still playing and producing. I feel like so the guarantee of us seeing our favorite players play is high. So therefore, I mean, we know we're getting our bang for our buck. And I think if you start with the one and done on the women's side, which is I don't want to say not to, but it's going to take away that fanfare because even if you watch the NBA, like you mentioned Cooper Flag, people love Duke. Like Duke has a strong fan base, the brotherhood. It's people from years ago that's watching Cooper Flag because they've been rocking with Duke for so long. Now he gets drafted and he goes to the Hornets or goes to the Wizards or the Hawks or anybody like that. A lot of those players get forgotten about depending on what they do. I mean, now come on. I mean, now their career takes a whole different turn after they make it to the pros. And even with the women's game, like shorter season, so it's jam-packed. We know that when a lot of the stars, like we just watched over this last year with this great rookie class that they had, the players played. The players that were supposed to play played, and so I love the backstories of a lot of the collegiate athletes that eventually will become pro. I don't want anything to happen that's going to taint the game because we already see on the men's side it's tainted. That's why my interest, honestly, is not there. Like, because the game is tainted. Like, I mean, we don't know when our favorite players are going to play. Even like you got some of these high school players that's coming in for 1 year. You get Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper on the same team, and they can't even go over 500. Because really, I don't care what you say. Their eyes is on the NBA. It's not on what can we do for Rutgers. Like, so that's to the point where I don't want it to get on the collegiate side, and especially with the women's, because I've always been in love with the women's because you get 4 years of development of watching them get better and better and better. Because most of these people that are on the Caitlin Clark bandwagon, they didn't watch her when she was a freshman.
Nope.
Knocked them out.
Yeah, most of them wasn't watching when she's a. So it was.
Who about her as a freshman? Remember when Don Staley got flack from everybody choosing her as Don Staley a Point Guard of the Year award over Paige Beckers? Remember?
Yeah.
I don't think they remember because they weren't watching.
Now let me be clear when I say that. I'm not talking about the enthusiasts or the purists. I'm talking about the bandwagoners. Like, yeah, those are the specific people, the trolls that's online, creating a bunch of false narratives and everything like that. Yeah. So like that's my thing, but we never would have got to that point if she didn't play 4 years. If she'd only played one year, we'd have never got anything to get all this buzz going. So that's really my thoughts about it.
Yeah, no, and you look at somebody like Juju, right? You can say that Juju and after Caitlin and Paige, Juju Star right now before her second run as in March Madness, she's already a larger star with them. She already has Kevin Hart. You have a full suit. You have somebody who is a certified gangbanger for the blue side over here, all red, frozen get out. I'm talking about Snoop Dogg wearing a t-shirt that has Juju Watkins in the front. He takes it off, and it's Juju inside of it too. Like, that's an aura.
All the same, bang bang.
Oh man, but it's all LA, all down, and it's that hype that you have because Juju's in here. That, like, hey Willie, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Like, that probably wouldn't have been around if she decided to go immediately afterwards. To like, there are more celebrities coming to her game, and if you can imagine, this is the hype. She's already headlining downtown LA buildings right now before her second run. Imagine what it's going to be like in a couple years,
Right. Now, moving along, happened on March 17th. The first championship of Unrivaled. It was the Vinyl BC against Rose BC. Um, I think we all picked Vinyl, and we came up short.
Right.
Basketball Club knocked off Vinyl Basketball Club, 62-54. Um, Chelsea Gray took home Finals MVP. It was an outstanding game. Just to get run down the stats before we get into it. Ryan Howard led Vinyl with 22 points. Shot 8 for 22. They just struggled. They struggled to score. They shot the ball poorly. Only shot 35%. Jordan Canada finished with 10. De'Erica Hamby finished with 8.7 rebounds. And Aaliyah Boston finished with 10 points, 4 rebounds. And Ray Burrell, 4 points, 4 rebounds. And the champions, Brittany Sykes, Slim, a.k.a. Slim, she went to work, actually hit the game winner on a three-point play. She finished with 21 points, 9 for 17 from the field. Ezra Stevens, she was a dog. 19 points, 18 rebounds, block shot 9 for 15. Carried the way that Chelsea Gray, she didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but she finished with 18 points, 8 assists. She hit some key buckets when they needed some scoring. But overall, she deserved Finals MVP. She had a heck of a run in those playoff games. And just, hopefully this is her being back to 100% because we know the Aces are going to need it. And I think she just played really well. That's what I told A. Willie last season. That's what I wanted to see from Chelsea Gray. Like, once she got back to form, she got to be able to put it in the bucket. The passing is great, but we know as guards, you open up passing lanes when you're being aggressive and being in a scoring position. And I think she has the right pieces to be able to do that. Of course, she's playing with one of the best players in the game. And you still got Jackie Young. But I think with her, if she comes back and plays at that level, along with Jackie Young and Asia Wilson, the Aces are not to be counted out anyway. But I think they're definitely going to be in some talks. And then depending on who they get to fill in to put around those three, they'll be back in championship talks. I think they talked about, doing some revamping to Unrivaled next season, just some changes within the facility and different things like that. But I mean, overall, I was asked my thoughts about Unrivaled, and like I told them, this person that asked me, that DM me on Facebook, is that I like it because this league provided basically a lot of development from players to do things that we typically wouldn't be able to see them do or haven't seen them do yet in the W. And I think watching players just grow and play under a different light, 3v3 gives you more range to be offensively creative, but it also forces you to play a lot more defense because you don't have a lot of help out there neither. And overall, I'm just a hoop head. Like, I just like watching hoop. So it filled in that void that we typically have once we get the W over, then rolling into the NBA and college, and then having that little dip by the time we hit the new year. It kind of filled that void. Now we only got almost 2 months left for the W, but we got March Madness to carry us through. So I enjoyed it. You tell me your thoughts, Bordy.
I'll talk about my thoughts on the championship and then Unrivaled overall, because Unrivaled is bigger than just Unrivaled, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Chelsea Gray and the Roses winning. I thought that the Vinyl, obviously they couldn't buy a bucket, and unfortunately after that great performance from De'Erica, just wasn't able to find the bottom of the bucket. Ryan unfortunately struggled a little bit. Jordan Canada was hooping, right? And also Chelsea Gray, somebody else who's hooping too. I'm glad that this league exists for players who are maybe coming off of injury. It allows them to get back into the flow and playing shape. A lot more stamina, like 3v3 provides, whether it be defensively being put on islands a lot more, whether it be, like you said, offensive creativity, OG. This allows a lot of players that I feel like needed that extra work or a little bit more show of what they have for these teams going forward, whether it be the Dream in Jordan Canada or whether it be the Aces in Chelsea Gray, to have their point guards show up, be healthy, and make some good performances in clutch situations, particularly Chelsea too, because the Dream got a lot more talent to deal with. The Aces right now, they're very top heavy. They're really starter dependent. And if you saw last year, the problem with the Aces, unfortunately, their Asia Wilson was there, always dependable. Their guards and their guard play, hit or miss, right? There was that time Jackie was high, then Jackie went cold, and then Kelsey would have some games, but kind of not really. They really needed Chelsea Gray to shine, and unfortunately, she was still recovering from injury. So the fact that, maybe not this last game, but the last game before that, 40 points almost darn near. Heck yeah, man. We can have some more scoring from Chelsea Gray in addition to her passing ability. A lot of things are going to look positive. Just having one consistent player besides Asia Wilson makes things so much easier for the Aces. But in Rivaled in general, a lot of people talk about the development. A lot of people talk about the flair and having something in the offseason. In my opinion, this was all a big ploy. Not necessarily a ploy, but it was all like another thing to add and push to the table for those CBA negotiations, right? Players are getting a lot of money. We talked about what they got $100 million deal with TNT in order to broadcast the rights for Unrivaled, and it was only what a 3 or 5 year deal, I believe, right? Which is already half of what the WNBA has overall for their already well established league. For 10 years, right? So Unrivaled doing it in 3 years for $100 million, leveraging that against what the NBA barely fought for media rights going forward for their CBA. There's a lot of gamesmanship that Unrivaled presents itself as having more brand deals, having more brand sponsors, paying the players more. Why do you think that Tosh Cloud is always like play these players more money? Why do you think that both Brianna Stewart and also Fee are always talking about how this allows more facilities and better payment for players? This is not only just for American players to be able to play a hometown, but also is to have this as a leverage to for these upcoming CBAs, because we know that the NBA is playing around with the W's money in some capacity, in some ways, because they don't even know how much money they are making right now. So having some solid numbers from a solid league that was just started and leveraging that and saying, hey, we know we can at least make this much money as a new entity. How much can you have as a grandstanding entity that has the NBA backing up for it? Ooh, you should be giving a lot more than you do. So I love Unrivaled overall. Again, the WNBAPA is doing chess, not checkers, baby. And I want people to know that. But it's fun, it's exciting, and it also allows these players to get some more money, which I don't mind.
And hey, Willie, your thoughts?
Um, as someone that loves scouting, of course, you're looking at players playing in different capacities, watching the improvement of players as well. What I liked about it were two things. It not only were the players put on those respective islands where, hey, it's not a lot of help coming defensively and all that. Also, this exposed coaching as well, right?
Mm.
Playing 3-on-3 and doing it in a full court capacity and knowing what players to go to and when, what sets you go to and when. Is this a time when we go to a set? Is this a time where we just let them rock out? It was really, really good to go behind the curtain to see which coaches did the best job of preparing their players and also adjusting on the fly as well. Because again, when you're in that 3-on-3 setting, and then when you have a set number to win each game, sometimes you have to adjust your coaching accordingly. So watching that, and then also too some of that player development that we've seen. Yes, a big part of it is the players because they're the ones that have to put in the work. But another part of it, and OG and I talked about this a lot, is we were excited to see the coaches that they selected because a lot of those coaches majored in player development. So now we're seeing them in player development, which is, yes, it's relationship based, but
Mm-hmm.
then when they actually coach the games, because I can say this, a lot of times when we have people working in player development capacities, you think that, okay, we can scout this player and you can diagnose some of the areas where they need to improve. But a lot of being a player development person is your ability to connect with players because different players respond to different things. But when you are considered a player development person, it's hard to get out of that and also be considered a head coaching candidate as well, because people think you're just a relationship person. So seeing these coaches and watching their abilities to adjust and seeing some coaches do it better than others and things was something that I was excited to see. And I love seeing that part of it. The other part that I'll say about the league as well is going back to our initial conversation about competitive nature, right? We got women on these teams that are teammates in the W, and they are talking cash money, you know what, to each other. And it is so great to see, right? So, again, when people put this narrative out there, that again, we're talking about this in our pre show, Bordy and I, like, are there athletes that once they get the bag, they don't care as much? Sure, there are, right? But generally speaking, most athletes, as we always say, I would play this game for free because we grew up playing it for free. Well, when you see that level of competitive nature that these athletes, obviously they respect each other, but you see Fee yelling at Angel, or you see, right, or you see
Pushing her too.
Chelsea waving at people, bye bye, right? Like they
Yeah.
are talking. Or you see Slim coming out with the belt, and they are so they are competitive. I love to see the competitive nature of this league. And again, because it's 3-on-3, you see everything that's going on. And sometimes in a 5-on-5 setting, in order to capture that, you have to have a trained eye like we do, and you got to watch stuff that's going on off the ball. Well, in 3-on-3, you see everything. So
Hmm.
Right.
it was great. I loved it.
No, just to top that off, they on the top of their additional salary, they get over their base salary that was a 50K championship, and
What they
they
gonna say?
yeah. I
Tell
need.
me if y'all ain't got 50. You ain't talking about 50K. Don't text me.
She said I need that.
Okay.
Hey,
Hey, and
did you hold on? Let me say this real quick, OG. Did you see what Courtney said when they lost?
No.
no, I didn't.
So Courtney tweeted out when they lost, damn, we blew 50K when they lost, right?
Uh,
And then I forgot who responded to her. Um, somebody said something to her about you thinking too fast or something, like another one of the players. And Courtney said that money was already spent, right? Like
Oh.
so.
all right.
Y'all heard it here, man. Can't be
Hey,
doing that, Court. Can't
no,
be
but
doing that.
just to get some quick shine real quick, to Nola Henry, who was the head coach back in January, it was announced that she would be a part of the Dallas Wings staff. So that's going to be interesting to see her transition from Unrivaled and going in. I think that could potentially be the pathway with Unrivaled for a lot of up and coming coaches, or even assistant coaches from other WNBA teams, or however that may work to kind of put them in position to get to where they want to be. Now, typically when we in our episodes, and we haven't done this because our last episode was a special, on the NCAA tournament. But typically, A. Willie has a segment, a portion where he gets stuff off his chest, and we got to come up with something for you, Bordy, because for him is get it off his chest. For me, it's last words, but you gotta put some sprinkle on it. Just anything that you got that you want to get off your mind, or anything like that. And we got to find a name for it. I'll let you go first, Bordy, then hit A. Willie, and then I'll close the door.
I'll say this for all of y'all, and I'll say this again. I know I said it, I teased it a little bit earlier. I'm gonna say it again. For all of y'all who think that just because these GMs whose financial future is on the line to stay with these teams are over here trading all these picks, just because they're trading all these picks doesn't mean that this class isn't good. Cheyenne Sellers, Isaiah James, Sanaya Rivers, they would have headlined some of those 2010 drafts, okay? Don't be sleeping on these girls' names, all right? Just because they are in GMOs and they worried about making sure that all these free agents uh look at their facilities and look at what they got. and are trying to make sure to court them in the 2026 upcoming CBA kerfuffle and nonsense that's going to happen, doesn't mean that this 2025 draft class isn't hooping. I'm telling you guys, don't sleep, okay? Don't sleep. That's all I got to say.
Hey, Willie, you got something you want to get off your chest?
Man, you know I always do. I always got something to say. Have too much to say, but I'm gonna keep it brief. We talked about this in our text messages, and I'm just gonna put it on wax so people know. And I'm saying this because I have a vested interest. We have a vested interest in what I'm about to say. If you're gonna have dudes talking about women's basketball, get people that actually watch women's basketball to talk about it in these national sports media platforms. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Oh my gosh. Watch basketball? That's crazy. Is that part of my job? Who would have thought that?
Gotcha. And part of my last words, once again, shout out to Rose BC for taking home the Unrivaled Championships. Now, that complete roster was Brittany Sykes, Azura Stevens, Kalia Copper, Angel Reese, Lexi Hull, Chelsea Gray, and head coach Nola Henry. And I want to say Natisha Heidelman was on that roster for.
She played for everybody.
Yeah, she played for a brief second. The other thing for me is, as I mentioned, I think in an episode or two before, we officially hit 26K on Facebook this week. And that's a major feat. Not to mention, I just transitioned this page over a year ago, where I only started with I don't even think I had 1,000 followers, but I just took a vested interest in just posting things and talking about things that's really me. Like, this is no fake persona, no character, no nothing. I nicknamed myself Troll King just because I like to make light of situations that typically people may not find funny, but I find funny, and that's all that I care about. I don't do anything in ill intent or harm to anyone. And just, I'm thankful for the people who has helped build this community, because that's truly what it is, as I mentioned in my post that I made about the 26K. But, just keep tuning into the show, and I'm going to create a Troll Time show page on all social media platforms, and eventually you'll be able to listen to us on all podcasts, anywhere where you listen to your podcast. I think it's about that time. This is episode 31. I don't never mention the episodes, but this is episode 31, so it's about that time for us to hit the airwaves, and especially now since we got the trifecta with Andrea Richmond, aka Bordy McBoard. I'm just ecstatic about where I think we can go with the show. And as I always say, if you don't remember anything, remember, I'm here to laugh, show love, promote, talk sports, movies, joke, and troll. Catch us on the next episode.